Are you ready for gold season to begin? So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time tonight just kind of perusing what we've discussed a little bit and kind of do some catch up on your questions and answers that you have. Put them into the page. What I wanted to talk about tonight was just an overview of what we've been discussing and are you ready for the gold season to begin? So it's kind of important to get yourself prepared. It's also important to know that the snowstorms and blizzards continue. But Memorial Day is coming up soon. And so coming to a gold field near you is the opportunity of a lifetime to recover a bunch of gold. And that's kind of what we've been discussing for the last few weeks, months. Tonight is sponsored by the Gold DVD collection or Gold Prospectors Collection series that we have. Go check out sourdoughminer.com GPC if you want to learn more about it. There's a description of what's in the box and why it might help you start your prospecting season right now. And so take a look. There's a special offer for Memorial Day, and you can take a look and find out. So I would suggest you go check that one out. And so now comes the time when we start talking a little more about what activities we're going to do and what things you want questions answered about with respect to those activities. It could be with respect to gold recovery or gold discovery. Take your pick. I don't really care. I can talk on either subject. If not, we can get other experts in here and they can talk on those subjects. So let me know. I've had people ask me questions recently about things as far-fetched as mercury recovery, etc. Yes, that's kind of a taboo subject for a whole bunch of reasons I don't want to go into here, but maybe I'll post some stuff or do something special on that front. The reality is it's become not just hazardous, but it's become problematic to apply mercury in the field. And so we typically frown on people doing that for a bunch of reasons. One is with the recovery systems you have today, there's really not a whole lot of use for it. If you tune your sluices right based on the principles I've been giving you all along, like the centripetal flow we just did, if you understand those things and tune your sluice, it doesn't matter. The reason you use mercury, for example, on a slick plate at the end is to recover the last bit of fine gold. If you're doing the recovery system properly and you use a multi-level recovery system, you're not going to need that. And so there are things that make sluices much more efficient than they were in the 1800s and the 1900s, early 1900s, when mercury was everywhere. And the problem is mercury has gotten out of those systems, even though economically it wasn't a good thing to let it slip out. Enough got out that we are dealing with the results, and we will be dealing with them for a long time. And that's given mining a black eye, and that's something we don't want to really encourage. So that's where I stand with it. Chime in below if you've got any questions or answers on that front. The other aspect of that is it's become extremely hard to obtain mercury in any quantity that would be sufficient to do a decent job on a slick plate, and so for the same reasons. So it's one of those things where I wanted to go into that, but not too much. I want to mostly spend the time tonight talking about any topic you want to talk about in preparation for this gold season. On that front, when we talk about gold season begins, we're talking about the melting of the snows, the abating of the rains, the stuff that hasn't quite happened yet, but it will soon. And when that does, the question is, are you ready with your plans of what locations you want to start prospecting in and what you're going to do your cursory inspections of your gold sites? Find out what new gold's moved in if you're already familiar with your site, or find a new site and understand what that site is telling you with your eyes and your ears and your brain in terms of where the gold might be and what you might start to do to sample it. So let's open the floor a little bit for your questions. I'm going to open my phone again because it just dumped me out. And so with the centripetal flow from last night, and today we pulled down the magic refresh and up popped 16 people and 7 comments. I suspect our audio is going good. I don't see anybody complaining yet. There we are. Okay, so audio's good. Victor Fraser from Australia, I believe. Thank you. He says, I wouldn't do anything with mercury. There's really no reason to. It's kind of a myth that you'll get more yield with mercury. The reality is if you tune your sluice properly and you use the right kinds of mattings, variations in mattings for different size, variations in flow for different, different densities, or not densities, but sizes of particles on average, you'll get 99.9% yield. And that extra, less than 1% isn't worth all the issues that go with having mercury in the water. Do I recommend any sluice boxes? I'm obviously a fan of the Keen A52. You can see it right there in the picture with my son. He's just introduced a new one. Pat was showing it. Mark and Pat have been working on a new series with the A52S, I believe it is, which is, I don't know what it means, super duper sluice. But anyway, they swear it gets even better recovery, especially with variations fine and coarse together. I believe it should, based on the principles that they've used, because they've introduced a grizzly and a underflow into this simple sluice. Great idea. Long time in coming. Whether they have it tuned exactly right, whether people know how to use it exactly right, it seems to be some debate on the web. But the fact of the matter is that's always true of any new device, and that is you have to learn to use it. We've used this A52. We also use it with, you can't see it here, but with blue miner's moss matting in the front end, just in the front 2 sections. And that makes a huge difference in the amount of black sands and fine gold that we recover. The stuff that goes out the back end is where your coarse gold, finally settles if it's going to, and nuggets will land in that front black section and won't go anywhere. So it's, it's all a matter of tuning and use, and you learn how to do that. As I was taught in photography, learn to use the camera you have. Don't learn to yearn for the next camera over, because you'll never learn to use it. If you use the device that you have in your hand, if you use it and learn to use it well, and that's the key, learn its little foibles that you may even be able to exploit and leverage, such as with the A52, you can learn to do things fast. For example, the A52, one of the things about this simple one is it's super easy to clean out. And if you learn to clean it properly and you use, like I said, a little layer of the blue matting in the front, it makes a great sluice for a very inexpensive price. And so what I end up doing is rolling these pieces up and shooting them down in that blue. You see the bucket's kind of shattered because we've used it so much. But shooting it down into a 5-gallon bucket, clean it out real fast, and then go again. Because the thing you get is you don't get more gold by sitting with an empty sluice. You don't get more gold by running too much material through your sluice. You get more gold by running the right material and then cleaning it out, running more, cleaning out, running more. Build that black sand up. Once you start seeing some gold particles, then go for it. Because your sample to bedrock is the key. And if you don't make headway toward bedrock and get those samples through your sluice, you're not going to really know what you've got. You just won't. And I see too many prospectors doing exactly that. They'll take one small little sample, a pan or something like that, and then off to the next spot, even though they found colors. I wouldn't do that if I were you, not if you haven't gone to bedrock yet. So that's kind of the thing. So that's really kind of where I go. Now, the other guys who are really knocking it out of the park right now, there's a Gold Hog. They're doing an awful lot of stuff in sluicing. And Proline Mining has been around forever as well. I'm not dissing them. I just happen to have a Keen, partly because they're just a few miles down the road from me here in Southern California. So I got introduced to Pat Keen way back a long time ago, and my son and I were sharing some devices we were building and inventing, and he encouraged us, and that set with me really nicely. That he was a big encouragement in my prospecting and in Joshua's growth as a prospector and inventor, and that just stuck. I like people who do business that way. So so that's kind of it. Let's see, Bob Sheasley, I still find mercury in a few creeks always contain very fine gold. Correct. You'll also find mercury in creeks, especially like along the Sierras, you'll find mercury in creeks that contain coarse gold, even nuggets. If you see a nugget and it looks silvery, kind of a light white silvery color, it's gold coated with mercury. Handle with care. Keep it separate from all your other gold, because mercury will flow from that gold and form amalgam with the gold all throughout your vial if you put it in the same vial with gold that doesn't have mercury. That's a tip, because it will mess your gold up, especially if you have nice shiny nuggets, because once it forms an amalgam, if you remove that gold off of that thing, it'll leave a real rough surface. It won't be that same polished, sheen, patina they call it in the jewelry world. It won't have that patina on it from being knocked around in the creeks and rivers. And so it's important to kind of pay attention to what you're doing with it. Don't mix mercury gold with gold. Mercury can be pulled off of the gold. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing that. You can find that out on the web. But any way you do it, you make darn sure you don't ever breathe the fumes or get that material into anything that has to do with foodstuff or animals. It's a problem. So that's the big reason why you want to handle with care. Most creeks will have natural cinnabar or mercury. Not necessarily true. A lot of creeks do, but for example, here in California, most of the cinnabar, the natural cinnabar that you're going to find, is in the coastal mountains toward actually just outside of San Jose and San Francisco area, the Bay Area. And so that is heavy in mercury. And all the creeks coming into San Jose are heavy in mercury, natural mercury. The Sierra Nevada is not so natural. Almost all of it is man-made, introduced through the process of using, again, on slick plates and that stuff. Now, what people don't know is that the losses on those slick plates was actually very low. The reason was that mercury back in the day was more expensive than gold. So the proprietors were very pinchy about weighing the mercury when they were done with their process of cleaning the gold. And they didn't want to lose more than a very small percentage in the way of mercury, or they'd be paying too much in the overhead for our operation. Kind of interesting little factoid. So it's kind of important. Now there can be, anywhere there are sulfides, there can be cinnabar. Cinnabar is simply mercuric sulfide. So anywhere you have sulfides with like pyrites or chalcopyrites, you can also have mercury pyrites, which would be cinnabar. And so, not pyrites, mercury sulfide. And so that's important to recognize. I understand the comment though, so just be aware that mercury occurs all over the place naturally. I still find it in a few, let's see, picture and sound are good. See, Gary B. Crow says, I have a lot of quartz. So if you have a lot of quartz, what you're looking for is dirty quartz. Quartz that's stained red or black or even a bluish color. Let's see. I've shown this one before. So you're looking for stuff that looks really nasty and pockmarked like this. Preferably not as pockmarked as this, because this basically shows you where pyrite, iron pyrite, was etched out of this quartz. So it's long gone, and what's left is iron oxide and some etched quartz because the acid that was released from the sulfides. What you don't want to find, you don't want to find this necessarily. What you do want to find is this kind of thing with some black and perhaps some chalcopyrite streaks, which would indicate that there have been metallic things in there. And preferably what you really love to find is this thing in a darker color with streaks of gold running through it, of course. And that would tend to look more like this, which wouldn't necessarily be as dark, but it would be red and stained like that, and orangey stained with metallic ribbons running through it. Now I cracked this one open because this is a classic kind of tertiary cobble from the Sierra Nevada foothills. And so this is the classic kind of thing that you find gold in. And so you're looking for something. It may not look as dark as the piece I just showed you. It may look more like this with the pockmarks where the pyrites were knocked out and perhaps magnetite. And so what you're looking for is this kind of pattern where something existed here and now it's gone, but there's still something metallic. Another way of, besides beating the rocks to death, another way to check this simply is to run a detector over it. It could be just a pinpointer like an MD20, like this beast right here. I'm going to probably knock my microphones for a loop, but you just scan this rock very quickly with an MD20 and away you go. This is a pinpointer called an MD20, and it's really powerful and handy as a kind of mid-range and fine-pointed device. It has a fairly good accuracy, and it's super simple in its design. You tune it and then you go for it. And then you have a little ring on it to set the sensitivity. What it does is narrow the focus down, but also cuts the depth when you do that. So, but I use that tool when I'm looking for that kind of thing. I'm checking chispas or fragments of gold lode or cobbles and boulders in the creek. So that's one of the things you want to be able to do quickly. So when you're preparing for your gold season, what are you going to do? What's a mother to do? How do you find more gold in these rivers and creeks that you're going to? What are you planning on doing? I'd like to know below. To put your comments in on what you're doing to prepare. Is there anything you're going to do this season that's going to be unusual? Do you have plans for that? And what are they? If you don't mind sharing with your friends. Just put in a comment or two below about what you're up to. I'd like to know what your season 2019 and beyond looks like. Charles sees the blue matting in the unit. This has it in there, but it's kind of buried. We were kind of getting a little heavy with the heavy sands, and so it's kind of getting buried a little bit. See, where can you find gold in southern Illinois, says Josh. There is a post on Facebook here, a video post where I went through Illinois. Take a look. There is an area down in southern Illinois. If I recall, there was some issues with the problem with glacial gold, and the problem with, if I recall, there was one area that had some interesting, possibly rare earth element, there. But go look for that post. That's how you find it. It's here on the page. Just search for gold in any of the gold in states. So you say, where do I find gold in Massachusetts? Where do I find gold in Illinois? And that should get you, or find gold in Illinois. And that should get you there. Start with search on Facebook on the Hunting for Gold page. Again, like I said, the DVD collection covers these topics we've talked about a little bit in the past. Just to show you kind of the nitty-gritty. Panning for the pay streak, 2020 prospecting. Let's see if we can get this thing to show. 2020 prospecting, government gold maps, sluicing, topic called 4x gold hunting, which is 4 different topics on gold prospecting and hunting for gold. And so that's what's in that package. It's really good for getting people started quick. Now, with that said, I'd like you to let's keep going with what we're doing this spring. What can you do to find gold in southern Illinois? Charles Dewecki says, going to use a suction nozzle this year rather than shoveling into a high banker. Is it faster? Haven't tried it yet. Where would you be suctioning? Because there are limits in some states on suction of any kind, which has turned to be the epitome of absurd here in California. But yes, it generally is faster to suck stuff into your high banker. No, it isn't always allowed. Yes, the result that goes out the back end of the high banker is exactly the same. Dirt, gravel, sand, settles within a few feet, and it's done. What I would suggest you do is make sure that you settle it into a settling pond before it re-enters the creek, so nobody complains about your plume or anything like that. It's not hard to do. You just set up a gravel bar and then pull your stuff into it and let it flow slowly through the perimeter of that gravel, and it will basically allow all the mud and dirt to settle on the spot. Very next rainfall, it's going to go downstream no matter what anyway, but this allows it to not go down so rapidly while you're there using it. And it also allows it to kind of, if anything should happen, you can kind of contain it. Let's see. Victor Fraser says, I'm going to use your advice and try to find and follow a pay streak. Awesome. Go for it. And remember, the key to that pay streak is the sampling strategy. And remember, the key to sampling is moving fast through that. So it's the panning, how fast you can pan, and it's the identifying where the pay streak is likely going to be, so that you set your lines for the pay streak. Okay. Now let's see. Charles Dewicki, North Georgia. Charles Hansen says, I found a rock white quartz with black that looks like coal. Is that a sign of gold? Okay, here's the deal on white quartz with black. The white quartz with black can be very much like this. As pyrites, well, when you say black, is it black and is there metallic kind of impression if you were to scratch that black area? Then the black can be silver. Okay, so that's one form of gold, is called electrum, and it has a high silver content, and if it's high enough, it'll form silver sulfides, silver nitrates, and silver oxides and all that junk in the stream. Now what's interesting is that over time that silver will be slowly etched out of that gold, and the gold will increase in its native content of gold. Therefore it increases its what's the term? Anyway, it'll increase its concentration of gold.
It's called purity,
carats per ounce. And I don't know why I'm having trouble with that word, the P word. But it'll come to me. So anyway, the other things that can be black. Now, let's go through a few lists. Okay, one is Some of these pyrites can turn kind of blackish, especially if it's like chalcopyrites, but typically they'll be kind of greenish black or bluish black. And that's usually things like azurite, malachite, and stuff that form along with them. But it can make the stone look dark and black, so it's very important. Now, another black mineral that oftentimes forms in rocks and minerals area in the same regime as gold, and I get a lot of times, I just don't have one here right now, I'd show it to you, but is rocks that are full of manganese. And manganese is an interesting mineral because manganese acts in conjunction with the sulfides and the sulfates that come out of those pyrites. If at the water table you get this kind of area where it's oxic above and anoxic below, that thing forms an acid reduction complex with uses the manganese as a contact catalyst to create a reaction that eats the quartz. You have to have the manganese there to eat the quartz. It'll eat it slowly otherwise, but it'll eat it really fast if there's manganese in the region. And so what happens is, a lot of times those black streaks are manganese that were in the region of the quartz, and so it's leaving it kind of with that coloring. That's just one other mineral. There's many minerals that can be black, but the two I'd really look for in that context would be the manganese and possibly silver electrum. The way you tell the silver electrum is scrape it and see if it looks metallic. If it comes off in flakes, that could be mica and stuff like that if it's platy. Okay, so that's enough of that. Minerals and rocks, I can go shoo. Let's see, Bob Sheasley says, I've been systematically digging in the creek stream for 20 feet downstream from bedrock outcropping, mapping finds, and comparing with other similar places. Awesome. So you're prepared with your gold map for the season. You know where you're going to force yourself to work and stay away from before you ever start. So you got a way big advantage over the average guy going into just such a claim. That's good work, Bob. Great. Let's see. Charles says, no, like fire dog black and white. Fire dog black and white. Oh, black and white minerals, if it's crystalline, can be amphiboles and basically can be various forms of feldspar. And so feldspar and what's the name? Amphiboles. And so those crystalline black things that are big are just larger versions of what you see in granite when you see those little speck. You know, look at those little specks. If you look at them under a hand lens, by the way, my recommendation for the night, go out and get yourself a hand lens on Amazon. Get a good one, better than this one. I've got a couple of them. This one just happens to float with me, partly because it's convenient. But get yourself a hand lens magnifier and learn to look at minerals close up. So get yourself one of these things and go right up to your rocks, hold them up there, and then look through the lens and look at the crystal structure. Spend hours looking at those crystals and get to know them well. Then get your rocks and crystals and mineralogy books out and start comparing the patterns of what you see. Trust me, I have never seen one rock with a mineral crystal structure in it that matches exactly what's in those mineral books. They just don't. So you have to know what they sort of look like in the real world as opposed to this sample or hypothetical world worst yet. Okay, quartz is the only one that comes close. Quartz can form nice quartz crystals with those great big hexagons and all that good stuff that look like big teeth. But the reality is, in many cases, most quartz looks like this. And so you're going to say, what the heck? Is that quartz? And the answer is yes, you can tell it's quartz by looking close up with a magnifying lens and look at the structure, and particularly look at the cleavage. Look at how it breaks. If it breaks in a conchoidal fracture, which is a fancy word for it breaks like glass, doesn't break in a nice crystal plane, it breaks in these circular bowls, then you know you've got quartz. Now you do some hardness testing and some density testing to cover that up, but add to it. But once you get to use that, this guy is your best friend for minerals. Get one. Hang it around your neck, carry it with you in the field at all times. You'll find yourself pulling the weirdest stuff out of the creek and asking yourself, is that gold? Is that pyrite? And you can answer those questions pretty quickly once you understand what you're looking for. You can tell mica, because you can see it up close and personal, and that helps you. So that's a big tip for tonight. Okay, so thanks for the advice. Charles says, you're welcome. So one of the things I wanted to point out is when you plan your site and you look at these streams and rivers, again, following the principles that are in, the various things, 2020 prospecting book or the helical flow thing, I have a report on that. You're going to be looking for where's the highest probabilities, and then you're going to start working those sites. This much overburden is going to be a big deal. So you're going to want to work the site in such a way that it kind of gives you some insight as to where you ought to work, and then work your way from that to where you are. So, if you're looking at these sites, you're going to work this gravel spit down the middle, or you're going to work on the inside edge of the bend over here. Which one goes first? Okay. And so that's the key to success in this, is knowing where to go first and what tools to start using first, and then the order. So you guys ready for gold season number 2019? Because I think I've about covered it for tonight. I just wanted to touch bases with you. Like I said, check out that GPC offer I have over here, and let me know what you think. And good prospecting. That's good through at least this next weekend, through Memorial Day weekend, maybe beyond. Check the site and see. I lose track. My son's been running that show a little bit, and I'm just kind of trying to get more content cranked out. Been doing some videos and things like that, and also doing some planning. So let me know what you think, and like I said, if you've got more questions or more comments, add them to the comments below. Good prospecting and good night. Prospector Jess, I'll see you tomorrow night. Catch you then. Bye-bye.